The Casa Grande City Council to order. Easy for you to say. Right, the first order, number one, thank you everybody for being here tonight. It's good to see a nice big crowd here tonight. And the first order of business is our invocation, our pledge. So I don't see, Scott, do you want to do the invocation? Or Mr. Chad Rowley, one of the two? Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we express gratitude as we gather here this evening for even a special occasion, the City Council meeting. We express, first of all, our gratitude for this great country in which we live, for the relative prosperity and the freedom and the peace and the choices that we have. We're grateful for this great city, even Casa Grande, Arizona. We're grateful for many that have lived here for years and have gone before and have established good things for us. We are grateful for those that are serving on city councils and other committees. We are grateful for their time, their dedication, their wisdom. We ask you to bless them in their positions and also in their family lives. We pray for their families at home while they are away. We pray now that thy Spirit will be with us all, that we will have good feelings among us, that we will recognize and realize that working together is most valuable of all. Pray that thy Spirit will be with us this evening, that we will be able to conduct business appropriately and accordingly. And we say these things humbly in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Thank you, Donna. Let the records show that everyone is present. Gloria?
Mayor McFarland, there's only one set of minutes, and I don't ever remember that happening before.
I know.
Tonight, it's very easy to do. I move we accept the City Council regular meeting minutes from March 18th as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Item D1, claims against the city.
Mayor McFarland, I move to accept and pay the claims dated March 13th and March 26th, 2019 as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the claims are approved. Next item is the meeting agenda approval. I do have one change. We have an executive session tonight, so I'm going to suggest or recommend we move item N to come just before item M, as in Mary. Anybody have any other things you want to change? Staff, anybody? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve with
So
changes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We do have a special presentation tonight, item F1 from Ms. Selena.
Mayor and members of council, in accordance with our city charter, we engaged an independent auditor to perform a financial statement audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018. We are pleased to have Marilyn Mays partner with Henry and Horn here tonight. She will be introducing the rest of our audit team, present the results of the audit, and also have a special announcement to make. And with that, I will hand it over to Marilyn.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Henry and Horn did perform the audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018. We also performed work and issued reports on the court's minimum accounting standards, the expenditure limitation report, and the report on financial assurance that's required by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. I do have two members of the audit team with me here tonight. One is Brian Himmerly and Kaylee Lewis, who has actually worked on the audit. But before I turn it over to Brian Himmerly, I do want to say that it was many years ago that I actually started my government accounting career here at the City of Casa Grande. Then 17 years ago, I went to work for Henry and Horn. So while there, I actually mentored many individuals in governmental accounting. It has been a pleasure working with the City of Casa Grande, either as an employee or as the auditor. I do plan on retiring in a couple of months and then turning the government practice over to those individuals that I have mentored. And with that said, I will turn it over to Brian Himmerly and let him present the audit to you tonight.
Congratulations.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Brian Hemmerly. I am with the government audit niche with Henry and Horn and one of the members of the audit team. Before you should be the presentation, and you should have had a copy of the comprehensive annual financial report delivered to you. I have a brief presentation regarding your audit and the different reports Marilyn mentioned just a moment ago. First off, our responsibilities as auditors is to review your internal controls, test those controls in some instances. We give reasonable assurance that your statements are materially stated correctly. Some of the policies and issues that we look through are whether or not your financial accounting standards and significant accounting policies are stated correctly in note 1 of your CAFR, and we had no issues with that. We had no difficulties encountered during our audit with management. We had no uncorrected misstatements, and we're not aware of any outside consultation with other auditors for other audit opinions. However, we did have one material weakness this year related to your closing procedures. This is largely due to changes in staff in the finance department and the timing with those changes and the timing of when the audit occurred. One of the reasons we're out here now in March or April 1st. But that material weakness was related to the financial statement closing process, accruals, capital assets, things of that nature. The controls surrounding those items are in place and they are effective and working correctly. So the finding is not in relation to any internal control problems. With that, we did give an unmodified opinion. It used to be called an unqualified opinion, which essentially means you have a clean opinion on your financial statements. So we had no misstatements that went unknown or had any errors that management has in the statements that we didn't detect. We also do a report on compliance with your covenants, with debt, your grants, your contracts, laws, and regulations with the state and the federal government. We had no findings in that audit report either, so we had an unmodified opinion. Your expenditure limitation report's due to the state. It's been filed. This year, your expenditure limit was $211 million. We do an examination on that as well, and we had no issues in that report. Your ADEQ report had no issues. Whenever you have $750,000 or more in federal funding that is spent in 1 year, the federal government requires a single audit. It's a separate type of report. The city had $1,091,000 spent in federal funds this year, so there was a single audit. Our single audit this year for major programs tested were the HUD Home Investment Partnership Program and the HHS Aging Cluster Grants. Both of those received unmodified opinions, so no issues in either one of those federal programs. And then your MAS court procedures, that's minimum accounting standards required by the state of Arizona. We also audited that. We did have, there's 56 different procedures we test there. We did have one item that we found, and it was related to voided receipts. 2 of the 10 receipts, and we're required to test so many in our sample. 2 of them, they're supposed to reference on the new receipt that there was a voided receipt related to that receipt. For 2 of 10, that did not occur. However, those 2 were early in our sample, early in the year. And apparently there was staff throughout the year that had come in and actually already corrected some of that well before the audit had happened. But because it had been pulled up in the sample, it had to be reported. So those are all the reports. I think there's 6 of them just now that we issued. Are there any questions I can answer or any concerns?
Well, I have a question for you and probably one for Selena. But, when this comes up, I know we've had a couple findings in the last couple of years, few years. What does that mean to the city? How does it affect the city when you have these findings? And is there a financial, issue or how does it affect us?
Yeah, do you want me to answer? Well, first, one of the issues it'll cause is for the single audit with the federal government, they consider the city to be high risk at that point when they have a material weakness. When you're high risk, that causes us to have to actually test more in future years. So that's one of the effects on the audit. The other effect is obviously it causes us to go in and dig deeper in future years in the same areas to make sure things are getting corrected and they're not just being ignored. As far as financial, I can't think of any particular funding entities that would withdraw money or keep money from the city because of this particular material weakness. Selena, can you?
Yeah, he's correct. So we don't really have a financial impact from it. Internally, I take the finding very seriously, and you can see in the management response, pretty much it was an unacceptable finding for us as a department, and so we put in place a number of enforcement items. If you read through the findings, we have a closing process in place to conduct those, and it's not an excuse, but as he mentioned, we had some staff turnover, and so all those items were corrected during the audit, but it is a finding due to those items not being corrected prior to a certain time. And so fortunately, we don't see this affecting our bond rating. As you know, we have AAA on some and then AA on the others. And so we post our CAFR in accordance with those rules so that our bondholders can also review our financial statements. And so a lot of it does center at this point around some of the granting items that we need to do as far as making sure that we're in compliance. So being a high-risk auditee does mean that there's additional testing, so the decrease in audit fees I was hoping for next year may not be there, but we will come back the year after.
And I think that's my concern, is making sure that we have processes in place. And, of course, the staffing concerned me a little bit because it seems as though a year or two ago we had a finding that was not similar. I don't know exactly what it was, but I know we had a reorganization in our finance department to help with that. And so this is the only thing that concerns me, is we have this again. And so are we implementing those procedures and putting the correct staffing in place? And of course, when you have turnover, you have turnover. But, this is pretty critical, to me. So that's my concern is the staffing issue. What are we doing to address that piece of it? And, the whole reorganization piece, are we doing it correctly to make sure that we're taking care of issues like this?
Absolutely, and Mayor and Councilwoman Fitzgibbons, we also did reassess our staffing and our reorganization with City Manager Raines' help. We have taken a closer look at that. We've also just recently done some recruiting, filling some key positions in the department, the accounting manager and the senior accountant. And so based on the findings, we made sure that the requisite skills and knowledge are present for the new employees. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Selena.
I have one question for Henry and Horn. In your opinion, is this a good audit?
Yeah, this is pretty standard for city and town audits. There's usually something that we find in a core audit. There's something we find throughout the audit process. There's a lot to audit for cities and towns, so.
Nothing critical, though.
No, nothing I would say needed to be reported above and beyond what we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Any other questions? Comments? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Selena. All right, we'll move on. Item G is the consent agenda items. So all items listed with an asterisk are considered routine matters and will be enacted by one motion, one roll call vote of the council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or member of the public so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence of the agenda. Anybody have anything you want to pull off?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
If I may please point out that agenda item G7, which is on the consent agenda, there is a typographical on the agenda. The date of the special event liquor license for the Casa Grande Main Street should be April 25th, 2019, instead of the 26th. Everything within your packet, the routing form and the application does reflect the 25th. Just the agenda had a typographical.
Okay. Any other, anybody else have anything you want to pull off? Anybody from the audience? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion or a
Mayor McFarland, I move for the adoption of the
consent agenda.
consent agenda as presented with that correction.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Cortzen.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McBride.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, next item on our agenda is item H, which is public comments. I do have a couple of speaker cards here. So I'll ask them to come up first. Robert Action? Is he here?
Yes.
Oh. Your turn, Robert. For the records, would you please state your name and your address?
Hello there, gentlemen and ladies. My name is Robert Acton, and I'm with REA Construction Company. And we did a lot of work here in the city of Casa Grande, and this is my work here that you're looking at. That's what Gloria had me do. And the subject I'm on today is the rehab program for Casa Grande. And that's a very good program, and I've built 100 houses at least, you know, or not build them, well, yeah, build about 5 or 10, but we remodel them and everything else. But the subject is that on is lead-based paint inspection and risk assembly report prepared. And I got the report the first time, I seen the city manager's secretary, you know, but then I wasn't seen Paul Nice. And we didn't get along very good because on lead-based paint, you know, years ago in the 30s, not 30s, but all the way up to the 50s and in 78, they used to add lead in paint. And that made paint last so much longer. But then when the paint starts to break down and it gets dust, and dust, you know, a human being cannot take lead dust, you know. And some people say, well, that's only for children because they chew it and they digest it. And that's not true, because our ancient people, they built lead pipes and it killed the whole civilization. You can't, the body cannot take lead, and lead is heavier than blood. And once you get lead in you, you know, sometimes it takes 30 years to get rid of you. Okay, so then you have a fellow that's working for you. It's Alton Bruce. And then I found out there was a city council that voted him in as a contractor. He actually doesn't work for the city, but he's a contractor. I am a contractor, you know. And what the city does on these houses for the rehab, they hire a company for lead-based paint, and they go in there and they check the house and see how much lead that's actually in the house. You know, and that's because they used to mix that paint in there. And some of them, it's real high. And so this house that we were working on now, when they got the report, they got it in June of last year. And then we started working on the house the 28th of December. And nobody ever showed us that report. And so we worked on it till the 31st of January. And we were better than halfway done. And then that's your gables, that's wood. And that's where most of the lead paint was in. And so this other guy, he calls us up the next day as soon as we had scraped all that paint off. But the one thing that saved us, it was really flaky in that, so we power washed it. And that had the water, it kept the dust down. But he called and said, hey, we have the report. And I said, if you have that report, I'd like to see that report. So he said, oh yeah, he brought it out the next day. And I looked at it and I said, this report is not for this house. Wrong address. Wrong house. So he brought me out another report. I said, yeah, this is the one. And he said, well, actually, it doesn't bother you, you know. I said, that's what I seen. This gentleman's there. So then the next place I had to go to, I called up OSHA. And I imagine everybody knows that. And right away they said, don't go back in that house. You know, because I sent him the report. And I had a contract for the city. He said, do not go in that house. And then he said, I will call the city. I will call up this Alton, and which he did. But I put the house on my work guys, and I pulled them off the house right away. And the next week, that's when after the OSHA called up them, and then he sent me a letter and said, all right, pull everybody off the house. So I pulled everybody off the house. And then they said, well, you'll have to have that lead that they're treated that. I do not have a license on lead, so I don't handle lead. I said, it's up to the city, it's up to you. So that took him 1 month to find somebody, so he says. Now it took him another month to get somebody in there and get it ready to work. And so it was last Friday, he said, okay, they got it okayed. And I said, okay, this is a new report. Let's see your new report. He said, we don't have it yet. And I said, we don't go back in there until you do have it. And so then he got it, and this Monday we went back in. But, you know, for somebody to do that, you know, he's very incompetent, you know. It seemed like he was setting us up so that we would say, okay, because we got most of it done and just keep on going. But I think I pulled his bluff, you know, and so they had to, you know, have it cleaned up on that. But you guys hired him, you know, and you hired somebody that's, well, what you got a fox in your chicken house right now. And he's not very knowledgeable in housing. He can't look at the big picture. And then, being that he's not with you, he's as a contractor, every time he gets a change order, you have to pay him $75. And on some of his, because he writes the specs, and some of them he has 12 change orders on them. And then you have to write change orders from all. And for example, he always wants to put aluminum windows. He likes aluminum windows. But see, that's a good problem. It's energy efficiency. Now, aluminum windows cannot be energy efficiency. Aluminum is a conductor, and temperature goes right back and forth through it. You have to have, you know, wood or vinyl to have energy efficiency. So every time he does that, I say, you can't use it. And he says, change order. And so he goes to $75, and he might change order that.
Mr. Acton, excuse me, would you do me a favor, we'll let you run way over the allotted time. Can you kind of wrap up your point, and then we can't talk about it tonight anyway, but we will direct staff.
Okay,
we will direct staff to
my piece.
Get with you.
I can talk another hour.
We appreciate your
Thank you.
comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Okay. Chad Rowley. Is he going to be doing the presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Chad Rowley. I am the stake president of the Casa Grande, Arizona stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is our privilege and has been our privilege over the past few years to be involved with the City of Casa Grande and other religious and benevolent organizations and exploring ways to care for the less fortunate in our community. It is our intent to continue supporting these worthy and Christ-like ventures. We are grateful to Mayor McFarland, the City Council, and particularly Council members Lisa Fitzgibbons and Donna McBride for their participation in the Mayor's Homelessness Community Coalition. One of the outcomes from this combined effort has been the new CG Helps Resource Center. Our church and its members consider it both an opportunity, a privilege, and a responsibility to help the less fortunate, including the homeless. Therefore, we are pleased tonight to inform you that we are presenting a check in the amount of $20,000 to the Community Action Human Resources Agency, or CARA, who will be acting as the fiscal agent for the CG Helps Resource Center. One other quick note, I'd like to also mention, he didn't include his name here, but Scott McEwen for his efforts and for his tireless work in helping in this regard. I'm grateful for him for bringing this to our attention, the need, and allowing us to participate. I'd like to invite, if we could, Mary Lou Rosales of CARA and Mayor McFarland, if they could come down so we could present the check. Thank you.
Here, you get in the middle here.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you guys for coming in. This isn't something on the topic, Brett. This is just something on Scott McEwen, that he goes through Peart Park and he's the homeless, I don't know, greeter out there, and goes with his Doritos and Oreo cookies and passes them out through Peart Park. So if anyone wants Doritos or Oreos, just go and you will see Scott McEwen in the park passing them out. So,
Thank you, Scott.
but thank you for coming.
Thank you both.
See, Brett.
It'll go a long way for the resource center, so thank you very much. The floor is still open for public comment, so is there anyone else here tonight who would like to address the council? The podium is open. Okay, seeing none, then I'll close the floor and we'll move on to item I1. Consider resolution number 5167.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff recommends that the mayor and city council authorize the city manager to execute a purchase order to Shade and Net of Phoenix in an amount not to exceed $30,915 for the purchase and installation of 3 shade structures at the animal control facility. Staff is requesting authorization to purchase this equipment using the Mojave Cooperative Contract. Shade and Net of Phoenix is a company that we've done business with in the past. Our Parks and Rec Department has used them for several shade structures as part of our playground equipment in our parks, as well as Hayden Company is using this vendor to provide some of the new shade structures in the Carr McNabb Park as well. So it's a product that we're very familiar with and feel comfortable purchasing. The 3 shade structures, there will be a 40 by 30 cloth shade structure for the animal control intake area. This is where the animals are taken in and taken out of vehicles, and our staff manages the intake of those animals at that point. And then the remaining 2 20 by 20 structures are for the dog runs to provide them the UV protection as well as just foul weather protection. These do come with multiple warranties, an 8-year warranty for the fabric, 5-year on the powder steel coating, 20-year on all galvanized components. And this product does provide 99% UV ray protection. So we are purchasing this, the Animal Control Division through the Facilities Maintenance Department with a grant from OCCHIN for $28,486, and then the remaining $2,426 will be coming from the animal control operational budget. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Powell.
Well, thanks to OCCHIN. It's so needed to have shade for animals in the summertime here, and I know I've seen on TV where they found dogs out without water or any kind of a shade, and the owners have got lots of trouble. So I think this is ideal. I think it's really be an improvement, and especially in the runs where they're back and forth in and having that there all the time. So.
Anyone else?
Just another comment, and it does improve the services, you know, because like what's the new lady's name again at Animal Control?
Julie?
Julie. Like Julie said, you know, they have a pretty large adoption rate out there. I think she said it's like 92% or something. So, you know, and having the dogs in fairly healthy conditions really helps get them out there and adopted. And I know she's doing a really good job out there too. So it's
Okay.
good.
No other comments, then I'll consider resolution number, please. Gloria?
Resolution number 5167, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting a bid from Shade and Net of Arizona, Inc. for the purchase of 3 shade structures, authorizing expenditure of public funds in amount not to exceed $30,915, and authorizing execution of a contract with or purchase order to Shade and Net of Arizona, Inc.
Major McFarland.
Major.
Mayor,
Hey,
Mayor, General.
Promotion.
We got a promotion.
I would like to propose adoption of resolution number 5167 as it was presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. And also note that $28,500 of that actually is from a grant. So
Yes.
very small amount actually coming out of our general fund. So can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbon.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Cortson.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McBride.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. Okay, item I2, resolution number 5168. Kevin?
Thank you. Staff recommends that the mayor and city council authorize the city manager to enter into a contract or issue a purchase order to SD Crane Builders Incorporated, administered by the Gordian Group under state contract ADSP 017-174-291-EZ to make stucco repairs and painting of the public safety communications facility on, what street is that on? Marshall Street. Sorry about that. The Facilities Maintenance Division performed inspection and identified this work as being needed. SD Crane Builders is available through the statewide job order contract, and that's administered by the Gordian Group. Through this contract, they're hiring a local contractor, Cooper Painting, to perform the stucco repairs and the painting as part of this project. The other portion of this project is some signage for the building, and that won't be done by them. It'll be done by an outside vendor. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I'm happy to see that they're using a local painting company. Mary?
Why don't we just contract directly with Coopers?
Because they're not a general.
So because we knew that it was going to be over $25,000.
They're not a registered contractor?
Not general.
They're not general, though.
So I believe the question was, why didn't we just contract directly with Cooper?
Right.
We would need to go through a procurement process, which is an open bid. This job order contract allows us to work directly through the administrator to find local contractors, in this case, to perform the work. We don't have to go through the legwork and the expense of going through our internal procurement process.
So we save money by doing it this way?
That's correct.
Okay, that's where I was, okay, we save money.
I'm still disappointed because I know we're using it for paint, but we have local sign companies, we have local general contractors. And I think it's our responsibility to keep our money in town, just like the carpet job we had back in December sometime that we went through the same process, because this would be a good sized job for someone local. And I don't know how much money it costs us to go through an RFP and everything, but that's always my, you know, like I said, why not just use Cooper and some other general here in town that could do it and get the signs here? But that's my opinion, so thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I concur.
Okay, seeing none, then I'll call for a resolution number, please, Gloria.
Resolution number 5168, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting a bid from SD Crane Builders, Inc. to provide exterior painting and stucco repairs, authorizing expenditure of public funds in amount not to exceed $38,500, and authorizing execution of a contract with or purchase order to SD Crane Builders, Inc. in accordance with the terms submitted to the Arizona State bid list.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of resolution number 5168 as presented.
Can I get a second? Anyone?
Second.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
No. I know it's a small bid, but no.
Councilmember Cortson.
With reservations, as I expressed, yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes, happy to see Cooper Painting get the contract.
Mayor Pro Tem McBride.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, item I3, consider resolution number 5169. Chief?
Mayor and Council, the Police Department requests authorization to execute contracts and issue purchase orders for the purchase of materials and services for the upfitting of our 2 new police aid vehicles, and authorize funds not to exceed $47,765. This upfitting would be through 3 contractors and include the lights, siren, antennas, and cages to our 2 new police aid vehicles that we currently have sitting at the knock right now, waiting to be upfitted. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Yeah, Paul?
Can you describe the duties of police aid that's going to be?
These would be the ones that we expanded their duties, Counselor, to include some road work to where they'll take calls for service that don't involve suspects actually present. They'll do some traffic accidents. They go out to major scenes and transport prisoners for officers that are working the scenes. They do help some in the patrolling of the parks on duty, and that's what these vehicles are used for.
With that list of duties, these vehicles aren't significantly equipped in an average patrol car, is it? I mean, they have a cage and...
Correct, but on these vehicles, the light bar is a lower grade than we put in, less expensive than we put on the police cars. But the same equipment, they do need a cage because they do transport people. They do have the radio in it. They do have the computer in it because they do reports and take calls. And other than the light bar itself, it's pretty much the same equipment as a police vehicle.
I just wanted to point that out because at first glance, that dollar amount looks huge. But I know from personal experience that it is very expensive to upfit a public safety vehicle. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Matt?
I just wanted to say, I'm really excited to get the police aids equipped out there so we can save time of our sworn officers too, and they really have a valuable asset for our department. So good job on getting that going.
Mr. Powell?
Just out of curiosity, Chief, where did they put the cage? Behind the front seat?
Yes.
Okay, because I saw they're going to be handling or transporting prisoners, and I knew they had to have a cage. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Chief. Can I get a resolution number, please, Gloria?
Resolution number 5169, a resolution of the Council of the City of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting bids from various vendors for the installation of upfit equipment for 2 police aid vehicles, authorizing expenditure of public funds in a total amount not to exceed $47,765, and authorizing the execution of contracts with or purchase orders to various vendors.
Mayor McFarland, I would move that we approve resolution number 5169 as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes?
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Quartson.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McBride.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, next item on the agenda is item J. J1 is consider approving the appointment of Valerie Murray to the Police Advisory Board for a term to expire on February 20th, 2020. Is Valerie here tonight? All right, well, I still want to publicly thank her for volunteering. This is a volunteer position on one of our commissions and advisory boards, so we greatly appreciate all of our advisory board and commission people and all the time that they put in for the city, because again, they are a valuable asset to our community. Mr. Powell?
I would like to, you and Donna do most of the, but this applicant was a detention officer, an investigator, a prison records clerk, and a PD at Barrow County Sheriff Department, so probably about as well qualified as you could be.
Yep. No doubt. All right.
I would move we appoint her for that position.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to appoint Valerie Murray to the Police Advisory Board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations to Valerie, and again, thank you. Item J2 is consider approving the appointment of Joy Eide to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board with a term to expire on February 1st, 2020. Is Joy here? I don't think she's here either. Okay, again, want to extend my sincere appreciation for Joy and her volunteering to be a part of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Does anybody else have any comments or questions about
Just
it?
tickled to see she's a NAU graduate, so I think she did a very good job.
All right, great. Seeing none, can I get a...
Mayor, I move approval of appointment of Joy Eide to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, again, congratulations to Joy Eide. We appreciate her volunteering for this position. We'll move on to item K, ordinances, resolutions, and other matters requiring council action. And item K1, consider resolution number 5170. Planning and Development Department, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Staff has an updated presentation for you on both the adoption of the various building codes and the fire code. And hopefully we've modified these presentations to address some of the discussion and concerns we heard when we presented to you at your study session back in last month. What we'd like to do is we'll go through the building codes. If you'd like us to stop there and ask questions before we go to the fire, that's fine, or we just go on to fire, whatever your choice is, okay? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Tardif, our building official, to talk about the building codes.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We're going to start, we'll jump down to the next slide. We're going to just do a recap of what we did in the study session. So basically, what we have on this list is the codes that we're adopting. One of the changes that I want to bring out, as we did in the last meeting, was a swimming pool and spa code is a new code to us this year. Also, I want to make sure that everybody's aware that we are adopting the existing building code. This was adopted in 2012, and we are carrying that forward. I know that can be come up to a lot of questions for existing buildings, so we are going to currently adopt that as well. We're going to move that forward. So basically, we're going to summarize. These were some of the topics that we discussed that came up. One of the things that I added to this list was the mechanical code. The reason why I added the mechanical code is because we had the filters on top of the restaurant units that was not addressed in the study session, but we did talk about. So we will go over that in a little bit of detail. The International Building Code, basically on the annual facilities permit, I want to talk a little bit about I did do some research, and we did identify some more businesses that were taking advantage of this annual facilities permit program, as we call it now. So basically, we know we have Blue Moose, we have Hexel, we also have Abbott, Frito-Lay, Daisy Brand, Graham Packaging, Hunter Douglas, and Walmart Distribution Center. The interesting thing about all these businesses that are currently operating under that permit, the engineer record on all of these businesses is Ole. Now, Ole did come to one of the Board of Appeals meetings and did speak at the Board of Appeals meeting. His concern was being too restrictive. As he had his list of items that were restrictive, all of them were allowed to be done under the annual facilities permit. So we went a little bit deeper with it. So what Ole asked was when we developed this new annual facilities program that we email it to him in advance. So we did do that in probably 4 weeks in advance. In that amount of time, we did not get a response. I did email him to verify that he received it, and he did receive it. But we did not get any confirmation to any recommended or possible changes that could occur to maybe clarify for Ole. So we did not get any comment on that. I also want to note that the Board of Appeals voted unanimously to bring that forward in the 2018 code with the stipulation that there'd be a one-year review. And I'm okay with that. I think that's a good idea. Anything that has contention should be addressed to make sure that we're current on it. I do believe in my heart that it's not going to conflict in anything, because if we go down to this next list, these are items that are not allowed to work under the annual facilities permit. And if you look at this list, you could look at this list one of two ways. Anything that says new on this list would need a permit. Anything that would be existing does not need a permit. It can be changed under that facility's annual permit. So basically, anything that goes wrong within that structure, within that building, within that operating system in there, they're allowed to repair and make those changes in a 24-hour basis or as soon as they need to do it. One of the mild stipulations that I did put in there was to have notification to the building official. The reason why I did that was nothing more than just clarification so that work would not be conducted that should require a permit. It can be done by email, it can be done by phone call. I prefer to have it done by email so we have a little bit of record. So it's nothing more than a conversation to say, look, I'm going to be replacing my HVAC unit, does it need a permit? No, it does not. It's covered under the annual facilities permit. So I just wanted to get a little more clarity out for that for council. On the next slide, the Energy Conservation Code, again, we talked about making it less restrictive. I think we are very clear on that. But one of the things that we didn't cover was the appendices. We did adopt some of the appendices, like the RA, which is solar provision. There was no appendices in 2012 to cover the solar work that's being done. So we did adopt that, so we have a little bit better way to inspect them and to also do plan review on that. The swimming pool code, again, is a new code to us. We are modifying the barrier height to 60 inches. Code currently calls for 48 in the swimming pool code, but we need to we need to align with Arizona law, and that's why we're modifying that height to stay in alignment with Arizona requirements. The Technical Administration Code, the only change that was happening in the Technical Administration Code was the permit sections, what's allowed to be done without a permit. The only line, we're leaving all of, I believe there's over, I think there's like 28 items that are do not require a permit. The number 17 was the only one that I added to that. It's still the same. We've just added that if it's gas-related equipment, due to safety, we're going to require a permit for that. Everything else will remain the same as 2012 exists. The International Residential Code, this was the topic of adding the Appendix U. The reason why we added Appendix U was to break up park models versus manufactured homes because they're handled differently. I think we went over that pretty clear. We have just about completed our documentation for handouts for the citizens so that we can, and Barbara has worked very diligently with people that are coming in. And I think this handout is going to really clarify a lot of that. So basically, that was the major change in the International Residential Code and the amendments. And I also wanted to let you know in the residential code that we have adopted Appendix G and Q, which is tiny homes for Q. This gives us the ability to have some type of idea how to handle and address the tiny homes. They are becoming popular, and I think it's a really good thing for the Casa Grande to allow those. And so now we have a little bit of regulation on, because there's a huge conflict, how do you get safety into these homes? And that Appendix Q is very helpful for addressing that in there. The International Existing Building Code, we readopted, as I talked about earlier, with no changes to the existing building code. So we're carrying that straight forward from 12 to 2018. The International Property Maintenance Code, we had talked about the weeds, the weed height. I think we're all very clear on that. If there's any questions that can pop up, maybe Paul can jump in or I can help answer near the end. So the only change there was the 6 from 12 to 6. And we added a definition for clarity. The International Mechanical Code, I took council's advice and I tried to research what the cost would be on these units. The unfortunate part about obtaining a cost for these filter units to go on top of these buildings is they're priced by being built, by size, by how much load there's going to be, what the requirements are, and it was virtually impossible for me to acquire a cost. I was hoping to get some type of cost to put these together so council would have some idea of the total impact that it would be on our business owners, but I was not able to do that. Whoops, I jumped on that. Yeah. So the food trucks, I added this for clarity because there was some question about the food trucks. So the food trucks are not mobile. The food trucks are mobile, excuse me. They do not cook daily and they produce less volume of cooking. Food trucks also have less impact on our citizens because they're mobile and they're moving around and they're not there on sometimes a 50-hour work week, let's say. So the restaurants are fixed, they produce a lot of smoke, and they're there 7 days a week, and they're usually operating 7 days a week, so it's a very heavy impact. Citizens that live near these locations can suffer greatly on them, and it's unfortunate they have to, but with this filter system, there's some positive things to it, but that does come with a cost. So a new restaurant will sometimes not get approval depending how close they are to a residential assembly, right, or use. So with this unit on the roof, it will have a better chance of passing through the planning stage because it's going to reduce about 95% of the smoke and the smell from these restaurants. So it can be a positive thing in there. The negative effect will be the cost, obviously, but I very diligently tried to get a cost, but nobody, unless I had a plan design, nobody was going to quote it out for me. So.
Did anything get cut off? I mean, something got cut off on that slide.
Yeah, that was the very last word. It actually is not cut off. It's just, well, actually rooftop.
There's only one parenthesis.
Yeah, rooftop.
Right, whatever it could be, yeah.
Let me just read it a second.
The last words are in parentheses.
Yeah, what this was saying that the rooftop units, they have interior units as well as rooftop units. I'm sorry that was cut off. I didn't see the expansion on the screen size. But what it is that they allow a rooftop unit and also an in-attic unit or an interior unit, and that was the other difficult part of the pricing. There's 3 different models that they can run, and there's sizing that goes with that. So basically that was rooftop or interior mount unit.
Can a new build restaurant request a waiver on this, depending on how they're cooking or what they're cooking?
If we adopted, they would not be able to request a waiver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt.
I was going to say that we should go the opposite of this conditional use, kind of to what Councilman Huddleston's saying. If it's denied for that, we could say, well, if you put that on, then you might be approved in that area.
Councilmember Herman, that's a great compromise. I mean, we're not looking to have the codes cause so much conflict with trying to bring business in. I think that's not something I have heard yet. I think that's a great compromise.
You know, because most of our restaurants now are not near homes due to zoning. Some of the older restaurants are now, but this wouldn't affect them anyway. But any new restaurant coming in, you know, if it's in the area of homes.
Commercial zone.
What's that?
It'll be in a commercial zone.
Yes,
Yeah.
most of the new ones will.
They're not in a residential zone.
Yeah, but there's some restaurants that are very near that back up, like
Right.
Burger King, yeah,
So
which
if
this
I-
wouldn't
if I-
affect,
I
so.
can maybe give you an example of that. You may be familiar with the new Panda Express that's being built in the Fry's Marketplace, right? That could be a Burger King. In fact, Burger King is going to go across the road now because that pad is no longer available. But and the Vlago residents are very close to that. So that was a Burger King. We probably would have, you know, I don't know if it would have got passed because we would have probably had a lot of concerned citizens from Vlago talking about the smell.
Because that would be a condition that you could add at the time.
We could do that, yes.
That was a great, I mean, that was a great thought, yeah. So that, if there's any questions, or we can move to fire, or if there's any additional questions? Yeah, that was, I think that was off.
So
That was the wrong button.
Do you want to address these separately, Larry, or can we address these separately?
Mr. Mayor, I believe that the way that the resolution and ordinance have been crafted, we can code from the fire code for consideration this evening. Is that correct?
Well, ultimately, Mayor, members of the council, you have the flexibility to not adopt any of these codes, to adopt all of them. Obviously, the way that we normally draft the resolutions and ordinances assumes that you'll adopt all of them along with the amendments. If you do want to change any of the underlying documents, the amendments thereto, we can certainly do that. Some of that language, depending on, how much it is, I would certainly, appreciate having a little time. So if you're going to make significant changes to the program, that I'd prefer that you table it so that we can make sure that the amendments are written in, that all the cross-references have been done. But ultimately, it's up to you whether to adopt all of these 2018 codes or any of these 2018 codes.
Okay, well, I have one comment and one question. So, do these new codes and regulations make the city of Casa Grande easier to do business with?
Definitely yes, for design professionals that work in other communities other than Casa Grande. And the reason I say that is because it gives them the same regulations to design to in communities, in other communities they work in. So anyone who's coming in, any design professional that works, or a contractor that works in other communities, it makes it a lot easier. The other changes that we might be talking about, we haven't really identified any changes that make it harder to do business, other than maybe the pollution prevention unit that we've been debating. Everything else, I mean, the energy code makes it less costly to build homes. We haven't identified any other provisions that would increase cost or time with adoption of these codes.
Okay. Matt?
Just to your point, that's my concern with the pollution control. You want cleaner air too, but as a former restaurant owner, thank goodness former, and someone who loves restaurants, there's always a lot of cost that goes into building a restaurant, and nothing in the restaurant business is cheap because it's all stainless, it's all NSF, it's everything. So in order to be easier to do business with, I believe that doing it as that the pollution control unit would be a condition instead of it would be the normal and you couldn't get a waiver for it. So that's just my suggestion.
How would we write that into what you have proposed?
Yeah.
So your motion would be to not adopt the pollution control provisions of the 2018 IBC, right? It's an
IBC, correct.
in the IBC. We at planning, when we process conditional uses for restaurants, if that was if no odors was expressed as a concern of adjoining property owners through the planning process, we could always advise the applicant that they could address that concern through the addition of a PCU to their project. So the only thing I think you would need to do is to not adopt the provisions of the Prevention Control Unit in the IBC. IBC. IMC? Oh, excuse me, IMC. IMC, and Mechanical Code. Sorry, thank you.
But if we do that, does that do away with the requirement at all?
Yes, it does away with the requirement.
But they're gonna check it anyway, based on the neighborhood use.
Well, and that's where we are now, right? We don't have a requirement to have that kind of filtering.
This is new to 2018. Is there, if I could add one little thought, following on to what Paul just said, one of my concerns about taking it out completely is if planning says that it needs to be in there, we don't really have any regulation on that unit. So I'm not sure if there's a way in the amendments to say, to adopt that, but to only be enforced if planning is requiring that unit. Then we can still keep it in the code book, but not enforce it unless planning, and I'm not sure what Paul's thought is on that, because that does jump into your department as well. But I think taking it out of the code book, I lose that ability when it is called out to have it's not in the code book anymore. I just think that might be a slight conflict.
And that's where my concern lies. Is
I understand.
to be
Yeah,
taken
I understand. I
But
mean,
to be able to give some flexibility at the same
That's what I'm
time, so have it there, but with that flexibility of being able to say, well, no, you're not in that area and that, so in this way, essentially get a waiver of that.
Mr. Powell?
Some of those food smells are marketing tools. And I've never smelled anything better than a steak cooking on mesquite fire but you can go buy some and it smells so good from half a block away, you want to go there and eat.
But if you're the neighbor, if you're in the neighborhood, I think that's what this is addressing,
Right.
are people that have to live with it, 24/7. It's not the idea that it's wafting down Florence, it's the idea that it's wafting down into your home a block
Are
away.
you talking about right next to a house or what?
But within a distance, it's like what we're talking about, is keeping it in there with the idea that there's a flexibility built in, as far as that's concerned. Because the whole purpose of it is, particularly is to keep, if you are backed up into a neighborhood, and we have a lot of commercial corners that back up into neighborhoods, into residential areas, a lot of them.
Well, it's not gonna change any existing.
No, I'm not
Right.
talking about existing. I'm talking about as they come in, we've got a lot that are undeveloped commercial corners, if you take a look as you go down our major arterials. So I like the idea of what Matt's saying, is keep that flexibility, but I don't want it taken out. I'd hate to see it taken out totally and not recognized as an issue. Plus, I think it would be somewhat unfair if I was somebody going into one of these commercial thing and it's not there at all anywhere for me to see, and then they say, oh no, you're backing up to this residential, and so in that particular case, then that would be could be a blow to someone that's trying to do that. If they see it initially and someone says, no, you can, possibly because of your operation and you're that much distance away and that you can plan for it.
Do you have to get a special use permit to be closer?
they're all CUPs, aren't they?
No.
If I might add that generally,
commercial.
these type of restaurants require a conditional use permit. In almost all zonings, most of these are fast food type restaurants, and they do need a conditional use permit.
So there'll be a
it is
hearing.
a case-by-case review at the planning commission, and it is a public hearing. I guess the comment that I'm hearing, council, and the question maybe that's being asked is, could the building code be modified to say that this is a requirement only if you have to do the pollution, you have to install a pollution control unit only if required as part of your conditional use permit? I think that's really the question I've heard posed, and I don't know the answer. I'm going to look to the city attorney to see what he thinks about that.
Yeah, and so, certainly we can look at a number of different ways. You have, the nice thing about the local amendments is you have the flexibility to determine, what pieces sort of work for you. What I was trying to look at now is to Mr. Tice's perspective is, I believe that some in the business sections, in the B3 zones, some of these restaurants that may require these hoods might be principally permitted uses, which then would restrict your ability to make it go through a conditionally permitted use unless you made all restaurants do that, which requires a zoning change. So we can certainly work through some of those issues. You have a number of different ways. You can give staff the opportunity to try to bring something back now that we've heard, what you have, and look at the different restaurants to make sure that none of them are principally permitted. I know we could come up with language that I think could get closer to what I'm hearing from you. Trying to do it on the fly in the building codes makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
So
We're not in a hurry.
if it does get tabled, does that push you into any critical waters?
It would.
It would, the organization called ICO, which is an insurance called a regulatory agency, sets insurance ratings for communities, has told us that if we don't adopt the new 18 codes by the end of May, I believe, that they potentially will give us a worse ISO rating. Whether or not that would come to be, we could talk to them and say, look, we're diligently working on this, but that we had to table it for a little bit, for another 2 weeks or something.
Is there a cure period on it, or is it just a 2-week read?
It's a cure period.
So is there a 30-day?
Yeah, it's our standard 2 reads and then 30 days. And there are 2 different, I think Paul had mentioned ICO, I believe it's probably ISO. And there are 2 separate ratings also that, as I learned we were going through this process, that there is the rating for your fire department, which is, traditionally used to set many of your homeowners insurance rates. That wouldn't be affected by not adding these codes, but there's also a building code grading system that ISO does, and I assume that's the one that they do. That is a combination of your adoption of codes, and also they look at things like how much money, they literally look at how much money you put into enforcement of your building codes, your staffing ratios, and so there are a number of different factors that go into determining that ISO rating.
So this piece is part of the IMC, right? Mechanical code?
It is.
Yes. Correct.
And I also have an issue with the annual facilities permit.
Okay.
So those 2, if we approve everything else and keep those 2 the same as the current codes, would that at least give the appearance that we've passed the new codes and we can get these others resolved in the next week or 2?
So from my perspective, the answer is, if the motion was to adopt the IMC without the pollution control unit, and to adopt the IBC without modifying the annual facilities permit provisions, you would in fact be adopting those codes, and we would be meeting the deadline. We could always come back and do a revision to those codes in the future to address other council concerns. Would you agree, Brett?
I do. The only issue we have is, I think, because they are listed, we would have to add those, like, for example, to exempt the pollution control devices from the IMC, we'd have to add those to our local amendments tonight, so we'd actually have to write those local amendment changes in there. So that's where I have a little bit of heartache. It's not that much of a difficult, process. At a minimum, I'd probably want to table it towards the end of the meeting so we could try to, work on the language if you desired to do that.
Okay, because I still have issues with this annual facilities permit, and I'll give my rationale just for the council's purposes. I was approached by the person who happens to handle most of these, and that's Ole, as it was mentioned. In fact, he handles all of them in the city of Casa Grande. And I had also asked for a meeting, and that meeting hasn't been set up yet. And until we have a meeting with Paul and Brian and Larry and myself, then I'd like to table that piece and get a little better input from him, since he's the one who administers all of these, at least for us in the city. I think he has some legitimate concerns. And so, you know, I want to,
Just
so that's why I'm asking to table
clarification,
that piece.
so you're saying that a meeting wasn't set up on his behalf, but I thought I heard that they tried to set up something and he didn't respond.
No, they put out the reports, and he didn't respond to that report.
He did attend the Board of Appeals meeting and voice his concern.
But he did have the opportunity.
He had the opportunity, correct. He was at the Board of Appeals meeting.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Paul and I just had a quick visit to talk about the timing of this. And at least given the concern that has with these two particular items, we think it's more appropriate for us to, at least on the building code, to table those this evening and allow Brett the opportunity to come back with some level of evaluation and for Paul to be able to review the changes that are being proposed tonight on the pollution control unit and the annual facilities code.
Okay, I'm good with that. I don't know. Anybody else?
Yeah.
So what's that going to take?
We just table it?
Should we listen?
What I'd like to do, Mr. Mayor, is go through the fire department's presentation as well in advance and at least get some level of input on that and ultimately see if there's any input that the council may have before we make the final decision.
Okay. Is there any other questions on the building code piece? Anybody has? Okay, then we'll move to fire.
Mr. Mayor and Council, we want to present the overview of the significant fire code changes that we shared with you in your study session. Again, just the major changes that are different from the 2012 IFC are sprinklers for balconies and decks and patios and how we'll address those, special events, temporary event structures, and then amendments to clarify regarding fire flow and sprinkler reductions. The balcony and deck in the 2018 code, the section was added where sprinkler protection was to be required for all exterior balconies, ground floor patios that were part of a dwelling unit and sleeping units where they were wood frame construction. The 2018 code language was for all types of occupancies, but we have a local amendment that excludes those from the square footage calculation that requires sprinklers on R3 or single family. So we are proposing we amend this section of the 2018 code to be aligned with that and exclude R3 occupancies from this requirement. In Chapter 11, which deals with construction requirements for existing buildings, one of the changes was that historic buildings should have a fire protection plan. It's kind of an addition to that, those types of occupancies that would typically have to have a fire protection plan, and this does not apply to single-family homes. And it is for those buildings that are designated as historic by law or on the National Registry.
Does it affect existing?
It is affecting existing. It is a requirement for existing historic buildings. So what it means is that they would have to develop a, take that back, a fire protection plan that's basically includes emergency escape and exiting for the occupants of that building. And the fire department works with businesses that are already required to do that.
Like our historical museum and.
Yes, which already has one because it's an assembly. They already have one because they're an assembly occupancy, so that was already required by the code.
Okay.
So it really does not have a lot of impact.
Okay.
At this point, I'm going to turn over to Fire Marshal Michael Wobser to talk to you about the next chapter.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As you can see in front of you, you have Chapter 31, which is permits required for temporary structures. It includes basically 4 separate categories. The first is temporary stage canopies. This is a new addition to the 2018 code, And the reasoning behind this is you'll see these types of structures at music festivals, concerts, and things of that nature. And along with these, if they're not properly installed and inspected, there is injuries and a large loss of life in some instances. Item number 2 is our temporary membrane structures and tents. This is something that we have been regulating and was previously done under the 2012 code. Excuse me. Number 3 is our outdoor assembly events. And once again, this was something that was already regulated under the 2012 code. And then number 4 is special event structures. So we're talking about haunted houses, mazes, things of that nature. And once again, there's already requirements in our current code, the 2012 edition. One item of note, these are broken down into a couple of separate categories, and I'll go into that a little more detail on the next slide. But this does not apply to tents under 200 square feet or canopies under 400 square feet. So basically, the larger the structure, the size goes up, the danger goes up, so the more stringent requirements and rules are applied. Okay, so this table here talks about the different types, sizes of structures and canopies. And one item of note that I'd like to point out for clarification is where you see it's permitted in conjunction with special event approval if held on public property, that fee that you see in the right column does not apply to that. So it would only apply if that structure or category was done on private property. If we start up at the top there, canopies under 400 square feet, no permit, but they're inspected in conjunction with the special event approval if held on public property. And then new permit requirement is the same, and the fee associated with that is none. Moving down, the canopies now are over 400 square feet. If they're done on private property, like I said earlier, they would be done under the temporary use permit. If they're done like a public event or a city-sanctioned event, they would be gone through with the special event approval process, and there would be no fee attached to that. And then once again, the tents under 200 square feet, no permit required. But if it does fall under conjunction with a special event, then we will inspect that as part of the overall setup of the event. And then the tents over 200 square feet, permitted in conjunction with a temporary use permit. Once again, that's only if it's set on private property. And then if it's, once again, a city-sanctioned event, then that fee you see in the right corner will not be applied. And then the last column there, outdoor assembly events, permit is required in conjunction with a temporary use permit if the event's held on private property, and special event approval if held on public property, and the same type of fee schedule would apply to that. Chapter 31 and tents and membrane structures. So this is basically saying that we've taken these requirements that are reflected in the 18 code, put them into Appendix O, and put all of the like type requirements in one location, a more easier, user-friendly appendix. Yep. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And also want to point out that this is, with Appendix O, this is something that we are already currently doing. These event guidelines and stuff have been in place here in Casa Grande under the previous fire marshal, and I'm continuing that now. Tents and other membrane structures. So this, once again, is going to go to our special event guidelines, and from the 2018 code, we've actually made this less restrictive for the events out there. So through some creative engineering and the experience of, once again, our previous fire marshal, Barbara Rice, we came up with the special event guidelines, which reduces the spacing and distance requirements. So it makes these larger events like the downtown street fair and some of these others easier to assemble and plan and lay out. The note there at 3106.5, cooking appliances. So once again, this is moving those requirements back into Appendix O to align with everything else. So one thing we were asked to do as well was see how the adoption of the 2018 code would impact some key events here in Casa Grande. So I sat back, and these three events are some of our largest. And with the adoption of the 18 code, as you can see, there will be no change to current policy, permitting, and procedures for any of these events in any way, shape, or form.
Good news.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Appendix B is a carryover from our previous edition amendments. This is just ensuring that those facilities in the downtown redevelopment district that that aren't served by upgraded water supplies, they'll be exempt from those fire flow requirements. Once those requirements are met, then they'll be added to a non-exempt list. These items here, Appendix L, N, and O. Appendixes L and N are two brand new appendixes that are new to the fire code for 2018. And then Appendix O, the special events guideline, as we spoke before. Any questions?
I just have a comment.
I had one question about the air replenishment system.
Yes.
Appendix L. Is that the equipment we have now, does that meet that code?
Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Herman, so the purpose behind Appendix L is firefighter air replenishment systems. This is typically designed for large buildings and structures.
For having them inside there?
Yes, sir. And basically what it does is it removes the requirement for multiple firefighters. It frees those bodies up. Instead of having to move the bottles around and replenish them, it frees them up to actually do search and rescue operations.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Bob, did you have something?
Well, I guess I need some explanation on that. I had the same question. I'm not sure I understand the answer. It's for their Scott packs and their bottled air.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what are the current requirements, or how is it changing? I'm not sure I understand.
This is a new addition to the 18 code. Previously, in the code additions, this was not a requirement, sir.
So it doesn't really change anything, we're just adopting?
The new appendix that has been there, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Apologize for the confusion.
No problem.
Anybody else?
I just want to make a quick comment. I think over, the last 12 months, we've heard about some horrific where there's been fires, balconies fall down, people are trapped in buildings and that. And so sometimes when we see these are, they're not fun to go through and to look through and go through each one of these and all, but there's so much value. It's not that, we're trying to make things more difficult for people. We're just trying to make it safe for the people that are assembling there. And I like the idea that it appears that is he going to be okay?
He's okay. We give him the Heimlich real quick.
Did you? But as we go through this, and that is that it's not to put roadblocks in front of people. It is for the safety of people, because sometimes when you see, especially some of the older areas like in New Jersey and that, you're like, where were the building inspectors at that time and that sort of thing. So we do have to, have a little appreciation for that.
Anybody else comments? I do have one question. Is R3, is that residential?
1 and 2 family houses, basically single-family dwellings.
Okay.
And duplexes.
So that's excluded from the sprinklers and patios and decks?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. So that's the only question I had. Anybody else? Okay. Larry, so do we want to, I don't think anybody has any consternation over the fire stuff. Do you want to?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Wallace and I are just having a sidebar discussion on that. I think that it would probably be wise to keep both of the codes assembled together, and so perhaps tabling the topic entirely tonight gives us a chance to go through this as staff one last time and ultimately come back to the council with our recommendation on those. At least the only 2 areas that we've heard of tonight that I've heard at least is the pollution control unit and the annual facilities code.
Yes.
Okay. So.
And I'm not proposing any changes to the annual facilities permit, but I want to have further conversation on it.
Okay, and so perhaps we have the conversation before we make it to our next council meeting as well.
Okay.
So.
Set up a meeting. I'll be there. Okay. All right. So do we need any action
So
then?
I'll move that we table this.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to table it. Can I get a roll call vote, please? All those in favor signify by saying, oh. Can I do a roll call, or do I need to do a roll call?
No roll call is required.
Okay. We'll do it by motion then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is tabled. K1. All right, move to item K2. This is resolution number 5171.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Tice.
I'm going to make this presentation for you this evening. We're going to talk about two new ordinances regarding flood hazard regulations and stormwater management and drainage. So currently in our city code, chapter 1540 is entitled Flood Damage Prevention, and that actual chapter includes both the flood hazard area regulations and the stormwater management regulations. I think historically what happened is when we adopted when the FEMA and FIRM maps were first published, I think in 1977 or 78, and we adopted what's kind of known as the state model code for flood hazard regulations. We just merged them into existing stormwater management codes that we had on the books, and we kind of blended them together. But the problem is those are kind of two different topics, and even though they're all about water, they're not, the flood hazard regulations only apply to properties that are mapped as flood hazard properties, areas that are in the 100-year floodplain, essentially, or the floodway. And the stormwater management applies to all properties. So what we've done here is we've separated those two topics into separate chapters of our city code. 1540 specifically for special flood hazard regulations, and chapter 1542 is stormwater management and drainage. The flood hazard area regulations have been updated to comply with any modifications that Arizona had made in what they call their model code for floodplain management, as well as any current FEMA regs. In general, there's no significant changes. There's some small editorial changes, I'm going to call it, wordsmithing, but in the end of the day, there's really no change in the regulation that's significant at any level. We are being required by FEMA to adopt this new regulations by the May 16th, I believe, and that's because they're publishing new firm maps, and as part of that publication of new firm maps for a section of Casa Grande, they wanted to make sure that our floodplain regulations were completely in line with the model code and FEMA regs. So we have been working with the Arizona Department of Water Resources to make sure that they agree that the changes that we've made here in the new code completely complies with the state model code and the FEMA regs, and ADWR personnel confirm that that is the case. So that's good. City Council would remain as the floodplain board. I don't know if you've ever convened as the floodplain board, but you would, at some point, you may be asked to put on a different hat and convene as the floodplain board, which is...
We never had enough water to do that.
Yeah, okay.
You get paid extra?
But you do have authority to adopt and revise the floodplain regulations, and you have authority to direct action on violations of the floodplain regulations that we can't abate through our standard code enforcement procedures. There is a change here. Currently, under our floodplain regs, you would also hear variances and appeals from these requirements. There is a change to create a board called the Floodplain Review Board and designate our Board of Adjustment as the Floodplain Review Board to hear variances and appeals, because frankly that's what they do. They hear variances and appeals from all other kinds of city codes. They're well structured to do that, and we thought that probably was an appropriate change to make the Board of Adjustment the Floodplain Review Board. That summarizes all the changes with Chapter 1540, the floodplain regulations. Let me talk for a minute then about 1542, the stormwater management and drainage. So, as I mentioned, we took the stormwater management and drainage regs, separated them from the flood regs, and put them in their own chapter. That's what you see here. And at the same time, we took the opportunity to update our stormwater and drainage regulations to reflect our current policies and procedures that we're using. Most of them are public works policies and procedures regarding drainage, and so we codified some of those, and we introduced some best management practices, like, for example, low impact design incorporating allowing drainage facilities to be integrated into site landscape designs to make them a site amenity, which is kind of one of the best practices that are being used across the country today, and as well as a technical change of the NOAA of rainfall calculation that we use to calculate how big your retention facilities have to be on a 100-year rainstorm. So the NOAA 2 is the most current, the one that we should be using. Our code references the NOAA 14. In general, I believe that the new 1542, much easier to understand our requirements for the various type of developments that we may be regulating and requiring stormwater management and drainage designs for. This is just some examples of how other communities are incorporating the low-impact designs to integrate drainage facilities into the site landscaping, and it's something, again, that we're striving to try to achieve at a greater level. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Powell?
We have situations on flood control, and I think staff's familiar with the individual that lives on Hopi, and the water lands on Casa Grande land, moves across Hopi, and Hopi is right at the borderline between the county and the city, and a guy that's actually in the county but abuts the city has been destroyed by this runoff for about 5 years now. It's eaten way down. The fence posts are this far off the ground, and he can't get any kind of relief from the county or the city. How do you address that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Powell, that's an excellent question. And first off, let me tell you, I am familiar with that situation. Yes. Kevin Lewis gave me a detailed briefing on that about a couple weeks ago. So there's a couple things. One of the changes we made in the stormwater provisions is saying that once the city requires you to build a facility, let's say a drainage channel going through there, and armor it in some way, rip-wrap it through gunite, whatever kind of armoring is required, that the property owner is required, the development is required to maintain that channel in accordance with its approved plans. Seems kind of a simple requirement, but we don't have that on the books today, right? So that is a requirement that specifically says, if we make you build something, once you build it, you have to maintain it, right? Unless we accept it for ownership and maintenance as a city, which sometimes we do, but not always. The other thing in this particular situation, which is secure care, what's it, self-storage?
Yeah, Copper Mountain self-storage.
Copper Mountain self-storage, they actually are in for a building permit to build a few new buildings. And so part of that review, we've asked that property owner to update their drainage report to confirm that they're retaining all their runoff on site and to fix the erosion on that channel and the degrading of that channel that's on their property. Now, some of that channel is not on their property, it's a different matter.
Their building's about to go into the...
Right. So we have addressed part of that concern with this ordinance change.
Okay, well, I will tell him there's some light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. He's gone along and just it's gone back and forth, and he can't get a break. And as I say, it's devalued his property. It's just a shame to see that happen. So I'm glad that we're working toward trying to get in positions where we can control those. The water that was brought down was done artificially, and it makes two right-hand turns, two 90-degree turns. And water never makes a 90-degree turn. It sweeps. But those tore out a lot of things because of the way they tried to get it off the property and onto his in that drainage area. So I will tell him there's hope.
Mayor, if I could, just a clarification. Paul, when you were talking about the Board of Adjustments serving as that board, is there any special requirements or training that is required of them as part of the satisfaction for FEMA?
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem McBride, excellent question. So if you look, I don't know if you had a chance to really look in the details on the ordinance, but the ordinance actually gives some very specific guidelines for consideration in granting any variance from these, right? And they're kind of technical regulations. So the first answer to your question is there's not a requirement to do specialized training, but before they heard any variance, we certainly would want to brief them and bring up their knowledge level a little bit on really what the variance entails and what the regulatory requirements really are, and try to answer those questions, because it is a very technical area, right? But not required, but definitely good practice.
And not something they really signed up for when they came onto the board, so.
I'll tell you what, I'll double their pay for them.
I just want to make sure they're. Right.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, then, Gloria, can I get a resolution number, please?
Resolution number 5171, a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, declaring as a public record certain document pertaining to the city's special flood hazard and stormwater management codes.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of resolution number 5171 as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Can I get a roll call vote, please, Gloria?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Courtson. Yes. Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McBride.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. Okay. Next item is item L.
No, we have an
Mr. Mayor,
ordinance.
there's also an ordinance attached to
Oh,
that item.
sorry. And ordinance number 1397.15.22. Sorry. Totally missed that.
Ordinance number 1397.15.22, an ordinance of the City of Casa Grande, Arizona, amending Chapter 15.40 of the City of Casa Grande Municipal Code concerning special flood hazard area regulations, adding Chapter 15.42 to the City of Casa Grande's Municipal Code concerning stormwater management and drainage, providing for penalties for violations thereof, establishing the severability of the various sections of the ordinance, and establishing an effective date.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of ordinance number 1397.15.22 as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get another roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Courtson.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McBride.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, now item L. Item L is a public hearing and to consider an ordinance number 1178.396, which is a major amendment to Tierra Palms. Mr. Tice?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So council might recall that this matter was before you at your February 4th meeting, where you held a public hearing and voted to actually table the matter to ask staff to work on a couple of concerns. After your meeting, staff looked at the issue of the public notification, which is one of the items that came up during your hearing, and we realized that though we had sent the proper notice to all the property owners, the notices did have a technical deficiency in that the Planning Commission public hearing date was incorrectly stated. So because we had that deficiency, we talked to the applicant and they withdrew their application and submitted a new one that allowed us to just start the process over again and renotice one more time and to take it to Planning Commission again, and then now it's back before you after the second round of notification and Planning Commission hearing. I'm going to ask Joe Horn, the planner who worked on the project, to make the presentation to you, and Joe will talk to you about that process that he used to try to meet with the neighbors and the property owner and the AT&T representative to try to reach agreement on the location.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. That took off some of my presentation tonight already, so let's go ahead and get started. Davis Commercial is requesting a major amendment to the Tierra Palmas PAD to add a new use of wireless telecommunications tower, associated equipment, and development standards. The location is shown here. It's at the northeast corner of Cortson and Truckle. Zoom in a little bit. Excuse me. It's not northeast corner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Paul kind of covered the public notification statement already. We just wanted to ensure that we met all statutes and code requirements to satisfy by redoing the public notification and the applications. Update on your direction. The proposed projects were previously approved by the Planning Commission at the January 3rd meeting on a 6-0 vote. The PAD was forwarded to City Council. Council made the decision to table the matter to allow an opportunity for staff to work with the applicant and the residents in opposition of the proposed project to see if we could come up with a solution for the location and development standards for this particular project. We did host that meeting. We had attendees from both Tierra Palmas and Tierra Palmas Patio Homes in attendance. The first site that was discussed early on in the process was in the northwest corner, shown there in red. The members of the Tierra Palmas HOA were opposed to that location as it was real close to some of their residential homes. Throughout that meeting, discussing that kind of eliminated the whole area of Avenue de Palmas, as it put it too close to residential. The next site that was mentioned was along Cortson. The Tierra Palmas people in attendance didn't feel that was appropriate. Staff also felt that that wasn't appropriate, as it would cause more problems with daily commuters along there and also be really into a high traffic area visually. The applicant himself, Davis Commercial, preferred not to have it in the interior of the site or on the two corners that he's labeling as future pad sites to facilitate in future development for his property. Then we also looked at the Treckle location, and again, staff felt that was the same situation where it impacted the community greater by putting it out on a major road there. So that left us with the final location, which was along Tierra Palmas Boulevard. The applicant then selected to try and move it as far away from the residential units as possible. However, during that meeting, it was pretty clear that no consensus could be reached to make everybody happy in this particular case. As a result of that meeting, the proposal has been made, or has been modified in the following ways. The monopalm maximum height was reduced from 80 feet to 70 feet. The maximum number of wireless facilities for the proposed site was reduced from 5 to just 1. The monopalm was relocated approximately 50 feet further east, away from the existing residential properties. A driveway and parking area was modified to ensure there would be adequate parking for any AT&T technicians on the site, and also would facilitate not backing up directly onto the street. And then the applicant also agreed to provide 3 additional palm trees along Tierra de Palmas with a minimum height of 35 feet. That would help blend the tower with the existing palm trees that are already there too. So going into the history again of the site, covered this in the first presentation. The area was zoned planned unit development back in 1977. Planning staff assumes that it was zoned that way because it was a mixed-use development to include office, apartments, townhomes, etc. No PUD guide, though, or development standards were ever created for this particular location. And the PUD zoning was then changed to planned area development in the 1987 code change. I want to kind of start off discussing the actual site a little bit with the development standards that are being imposed with this particular PID. And the first one is one wireless facility shall be permitted and it shall be located in the area applied for and approved in the planning cases DSA 18-00096-01 and DSA 18-00126-01. The maximum height of the proposed wireless monopole is 70 feet. The wireless monopole must be a stealth design approved by Planning Commission. All associated cables shall be internal to the monopole and undergrounded to the source equipment area. Ground mount equipment and screening wall must have a 15-foot setback from all property lines. The landscape within the 15-foot setback will be required at the time of future building projects. The ground mount screening wall must be constructed of stucco and painted to match surrounding or existing development within Tierra Palmas. 3 additional palm trees with a maximum height of 35 feet shall be planted adjacent to the proposed monopalm. Said palm trees shall be maintained by the wireless facility operator. And all wireless facilities shall comply with all Federal Communication Commission regulations regarding radio frequency emissions. So we're going to get into the site plan here. You can see the site plan here. We'll zoom in a little bit to the south portion. Originally, this is the original location of the site. We've gone ahead and shifted it as far over as possible, which is about 50 feet, as you've shown there. Here's a little bit further detail. You can see the original location kind of shadowed in over to the left. So when we're looking at the review criteria for the PAD amendment, we're just going to cover a couple of the items here. And the first one is the relationship of the plan to conditions both on and off the property. So due to the stealth aspect, the reduced height, the additional landscaping, stucco finish on the screening wall, and relocation away from residential area, staff feels there will be no adverse impact on or off the property. One other note that kind of ties in with this is the relationship to the city council strategic plan. It complies with the infrastructure goal to provide access to the internet for 100% of the citizens by 2019. So now we're going to get into the design aspect of it a little bit more. You can see the first one is the screening is an 8-foot high stucco block wall to painted the nearby structures, as we indicated earlier. The 3 new palm trees are being added. They're highlighted in red and green, and with the existing trees highlighted in yellow. And they're designed to blend with the existing palm trees and also help blend in the monopalm that's being proposed with this project. And then you can see the setback. We required a 15-foot setback. There'll be associated landscape provided as the site develops out. The applicant did provide some photo simulations. So this is looking east from the Tierra Palmas residential area. And you can see the proposed. Here we are looking north. Looking south. And then the final one is looking west. So notification was provided. As mentioned earlier, it met all or exceeded those requirements set per the city code. Staff has received letters in opposition. All letters were provided to the Planning Commission and included in the RCA forwarded to City Council. At the Planning Commission public hearing, 3 residents spoke. At the hearing, the minutes were provided in the RCA packet as well. In conclusion, Planning Commission recommends on a 6-0 vote that the City Council approve DSA 18-00096-01, a major amendment to the PAD zone to add the new use of wireless telecommunications tower, associated equipment, and development standards to the Tierra Palmas PAD. I'd be happy to take questions.
Bob?
Comment. My hat is off to the applicant, compromising, working with the city to make the project a little more appealable, reducing the height of the tower, reducing the maximum number from 5 to 1, and also new to me was the addition of new palm trees in the area. So.
Anybody else? Huh?
Wish we could have got more of a consensus, but it seems like we tried to work together with everybody, and they did move it, did take the heights down and everything, and we got the median cleaned up as well, which I think makes the area look a lot better too. It's tough decisions when we're dealing with people here that we've known for a long time, so I've talked to people, I've had calls from people in Tierra Palmas and outside that need better cell service in the area. I have heard opposition to it as well, but it also fits with our strategic plan for connectivity for economic development. And also, I've heard from some people that are worried in the area that only have cell phones and they can't get 911 service. So there's specifically winter visitors that I deal with. So that's just what I've been hearing from people.
And just to kind of piggyback on Matt, I am glad that we did table it, and you're right. I mean, these are, people's homes, and I get there, when you look outside, you want a view. I mean, of course you don't know what's going to come on that property in the future. I really wish we could have come to a better, understanding and support of the tower, because it is, I know Mary and I have gone to these conferences, and we, the whole internet is critical in cities. And as you travel, to different areas of the country, I mean, there's these units everywhere, and even in other countries. And I was just in another country, and so they are everywhere. And I do like the look. I was happy to see that the applicant is trying to work, to make it blend a little bit better. I'm disappointed, with the residents, and I think you guys are going to probably come up and talk. So I really do want to hear exactly, what your. I mean, I saw some of the correspondence, but the concerns are, because to me it seems as though that it was a good compromise in trying to work together with the applicant. And as I travel to other cities, I do see these units in areas where there's homes, close by, and so I do look forward, because I think a few of you, are you guys going to come up and speak? A couple of you?
There's a public hearing.
Yeah, okay, good. So I'll wait until they speak, and, but I am glad we tabled it, and I appreciate you guys working with them, and I appreciate the residents coming, expressing their concerns, and the applicant trying to work with everyone. So, I just, yeah, I'll just wait till the public hearing then.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Mary?
Basically, a lot of it comes down to the residents have a right to their property in that, but the owner of this property has certain rights also, which I don't think really has been addressed here. I have to think that 100 years ago, when we were putting up telephone poles and we were doing other things, there is a lot of pushback. There is what's good for the general area. I do like the idea that the applicant is trying to do their best to mitigate the circumstance. And I have to say, in all honesty, I drive by that, and it really isn't all that attractive to start with. And I'm hoping that with the addition of the other trees, it's going to make it more attractive.
Anybody else?
Before I open the public hearing. Okay, seeing no other comments or questions to staff, I'm going to open the floor to public hearing, public comment. I would ask that anybody who comes forward, please state your name and give us your address for the records, and then try and keep your comments to 3 to 5 minutes, because I will be monitoring it. Please.
Hi, good evening. I'm Mike Campbell. I am a consultant for AT&T. My address is 15974 North 77th Street in Scottsdale. I want to thank staff. They've been a big help through this whole process. I don't want to repeat about what Joe had to state, but as was noted, this monopalm and the equipment and the new palms are all part of the PAD amendment for Atira palmas. Moving the site 50 feet over was one of 3 concessions that our group made. The height reduction, moving it over and adding 3 additional palm trees. It will help blend it. The interesting point, when we now go to a 70-foot tall monopalm, the top of the fronds at 70, the bottom of the fronds are 55. So we have natural palms now that are in the area of 40 to 42 feet. So you have only a 13 to 15 foot gap, whereas before we had 10 feet plus on that. So it will make a difference with this reduced in height and in line with everything. The setbacks, by moving it over 50 feet, we now sit approximately 187 feet from the location of the monopalm to the west property line, which is about 2.6 to 1 setback, and far exceeds the industry norm in Arizona is typically 2 to 1 to residential. As I mentioned previously, the nearby AT&T sites are to the north, south, and southeast, about 2 to 2.5 miles. So this location fills that gap in the center. Height. One thing we were just recently made aware of is to assist in cleaning up the palm trees in that area was to have the palms trimmed along the property that's owned by Davis Commercial, and that will be working with Davis Commercial on. So said I don't want to repeat a bunch of other things, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Wright with Pinal Design Group. I live at 976 Paseo del Oro. We are going to be immensely impacted by this cell tower. I represent, along with several other people, the majority of the property owners that are affected within 300 feet of the cell tower. They have either come and spoken to you in the last 3 meetings, including this one, or have submitted letters of objection to this cell tower project, and you have read them or you have heard them. A pretty vast majority of property owners are against this project. The public hearing process provides for the public immediately affected by these projects to come before the governing body and voice their objections or approval of a proposed project. And that's what's so strong about these public hearings, is you get that. And it doesn't always work out that way, but when you have so many objections to a project, you got to ask yourself, what are you doing wrong? And I think you guys got to ask yourself that, because this cell tower is in the wrong place. It's not pleasing everybody except for you. And we believe that once it gets built, it will be a mistake, and when we all drive by it, it will look ugly. And we can only do that by voting it down now. But the public process still gives us a chance to listen to the property owners in the immediate vicinity and to take heart what they're trying to tell you. I know I've been to a few of these hearings before. 2 stand out in my mind. Lowe's and Walmart back in the early 2000s. The rooms were both filled with many objectors who didn't want these projects, and yet the council voted for them. I believe those were good decisions to vote those projects in, but I don't believe this one is a good choice for you to make, and I don't think it'll be good for our residents to have it. I believe there's better places for this. There are other zoning areas that require a 75-foot setback for these. Your own code tells you that a setback of 75 feet is needed for these towers of this height. Yet this cell tower is skirting the code by going into a pad which has no definition of any height requirement. That's what we object to, is because it's right up against Tierra Palmas Boulevard, which is the entry to our city, to our community. I just don't think it's a good idea. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask council if there are any other comments or questions you have of staff. All right. Seeing none, then I will call the question. And ordinance number 1178.396, please, Gloria.
Ordinance number 1178.396, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Casa Grande, Arizona, approving a major amendment to Tierra Palmas Casa Grande planned area development adopted for property generally located at the southwest corner of Courtson Road and Treco Road, Casa Grande, Arizona.
Mayor McFarland, I would move for the passage of ordinance number 1178.396 as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
You know what, this is a really tough one because I really appreciate the residents and the community, but I don't agree, Chuck, that this is something that benefits me personally. I know you said that it'll benefit us, and it doesn't. I really feel that this is a need in our community, and it's going to go somewhere else that's going to be close to another neighborhood. And so I just think that the applicant has done a good job trying to address some of the concerns. So it's tough, but I'm going to vote yes on this.
Councilmember Herman.
I have to say the same as Councilwoman Fitzgibbons. It's a tough vote, but I think they've made a lot of concessions so that they could blend in as well as possible, so I'll vote yes.
Councilmember Courtson.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Bob Davis and his wife are good friends of mine, and I want him to be successful on his property. But I've always thought that the existing homeowners, the property owners that are affected, should have the most importance with this instead of a new plan. And, you know, if this could have gone to either of the corners, I think we'd have been pretty good with it. But where it is, it's already passed. So I'm not saying anything, but I do have to cast a no vote in recognition of the homeowners, and they've lived there for a number of years, and they feel like that this has really been detrimental to their future enjoyment and land and property value of where they live. So my vote is no.
Mayor Pro Tem McBride.
You know, I just, echoing what everybody else said, I think it's really difficult, and I applaud Chuck for being so elegant in his statement, and I do believe that they have a right, and I also believe the person that owns this property has a right, and so for that reason, I vote yes.
Mayor McFarland.
To echo some of my fellow council members, I also agree with Donna and Mary and Matt, but I'm going to also vote yes. All right, so we'll move. We're going to before we go into executive session, we did move reports up. Item N is the next item. So I think I started with you, Bob, last time. So Donna, why don't we start with you?
There's so much stuff going on, and I'm not going to mention everything that we've been involved with over the last couple of weeks, but kudos to the police department. They had their awards ceremony, an employee ceremony this weekend, and it was really great to see staff recognized, but also to have Kent Volkner there. And one of the things that, for those of you that were not there, that he said that at the end of the day, he chooses to live in Casa Grande and he chooses to raise his family here. And I thought that that was a real tribute to our police department. So hats off to them. Congratulations, City of Eloy. We were at their the grand opening of their city hall. And I just wanted to mention one thing that happened this weekend, and kudos to community services. Some of you probably heard that there was a suicide that involved a local musician. It was well known. And this weekend they had a tribute, and it was called the Night of Hope and Light, that was downtown. They ended up having over 500 people from the Valley radio station came down, and it was really a tribute to our local community. And community services worked with them, even though that they were asking for some things that usually come before us, and they were able to work around that. So it really talked about our community coming together, and there were a lot of people that asked for help from that night. So that's all I have.
Mary?
I went out and attended out at the mall the free concert that they had out there, and I have to tell you, everybody has to go out there. First of all, we had the great weather, but I had the opportunity to meet the new manager, who's very enthusiastic, very personal. I swear she talked to all 200, 300 people that were out there. There's more concerts planned, and all the newspaper will be running, and I'm sure that we can find something online regarding those. But I really like the idea of seeing that, of her out there promoting, and that instead of just letting them all die on its own, it's really getting more generated and seeing all the different age groups. And I tell you, this group was amazing. They really were. They were very, very talented. If this is an idea of what's going to be out there, I'm really looking forward to that. The end of this month, we have the ribbon cutting for the neon sign park, which I'm real excited about. And we have Casa is going to have their fundraiser, so hopefully we can all attend those. And we have also, do we not have State of the City?
State of the City this Thursday at 1 o'clock.
This Thursday, and so that's about all I have.
I'll mention that.
I'm sorry, did I steal your thunder?
No, I'm going to mention it again.
Okay. I just mentioned it, so you get the detail.
Okay. Lisa?
Well, you know what? I actually left the day after our last meeting and returned last night at 11 p.m. I was gone. I had the opportunity to travel to Portugal and Spain. Our daughter's studying in Barcelona, and so we had the opportunity to go and visit and travel around. But I'll tell you, even when you're on vacation, you still notice everything about cities. And, you just always think you're going to get away with it, but I notice sidewalks, I notice cell towers, I notice, we were talking about buildings, and so it's just amazing how your mind is always, working and comparing, and, of course, the what?
And your store.
And my store, my family's out there, but yeah, no, it was just, of course, the streets and, the sidewalks. I mean, I thought, how are there not a million lawsuits in these cities, with the sidewalks that are in these old towns. But then you look at the freeways, and in both Portugal and Spain, and they're beautiful. I mean, they're 4 lanes, they're clean as can be. Driving down these, we just drove in Portugal, but and public transit is wonderful. Even in small towns, they have public transit, and so of course you notice that. So it was still educational, but even though it was a nice vacation. So I don't have too much, even though I know now my next couple months are going to be pretty hectic, so, yeah.
Mr. Powell?
I don't really have anything of exciting. I didn't go to Portugal or Spain.
I didn't either.
I almost got to go to Eloy and Gila Bend, but I didn't make it. So I guess I just want to say that we have 7 people up here, and all 7 voted their minds. And it makes me feel good that I prioritize the people that are established residents, and I'm going to let it go at that.
Matt?
A few things this week. We had a nice retirement party for Helen Newhorst from the Chamber at the property. Really good food there. I just hope everyone notices their weeds around town, because they're pretty right now, but they're going to be a problem in a month or 2. So we just need to keep an eye on that. The Youth Commission is doing their annual day of shredding on April 27th, 9 to 12 at the Credit Union on Pinal now, where it used to be, 1001 North Pinal. So that'll be an exciting day for everybody, so come out. And I did want to talk about the Night of Hope and Light. I went to that on Saturday instead of some other events that were going on. And it was to a tribute to Chester Bennington, who is a well-known rock and roll guy nationally and everything. And anyway, it was neat because this was a community-driven event. There was 500 people. The city didn't start the event. The community started it. And that's what we talked about at the ULI Institute. And it was at the area we talked about, and I met the owners of the La Cocina area, talked to them, and I want to give, and I know Donna said this a little bit, but I spent a lot of time there with these people talking, and it was a good opportunity for the city to say, you can't do that because we can't close the street in time, but instead they said, let us work with you, and we'll close the street down because we know you might have a lot of people, and it was a great event. And I got to hang out with the 2 police officers that were there that couldn't go to the banquet, so I got some police time too that night. But it was neat because there was people from downtown, local churches. They had suicide awareness, so they partnered with agencies, and they had booths down there if you had drug, alcohol, and it was an alcohol-free event too. So it was really neat to see an event like that with music and everything, and everybody was having a great time. So they figured out how to make this thing happen in cooperation with everybody. And I also got to talk to the food truck people, and I learned a lot more about food trucks that night, so it was pretty interesting. And it was a lot of fun. But I would have one thing, because we also talked about our ULI, is that park right there next to it, because there's a fence right now, and I know we're going to go down that road, but there's neat lights in the park that look like the ones out front here, but they don't work. So maybe we could have, I don't know if that's us, APS, or who that is, but that's the park on Reed Mayshore Park. Thank you. So that would be great if we could look into what's going on with those lights. But other than that, it was a great event, and everybody had a good time. And we got some good exposure from 98 KUPD and Casa Grande. So
sweet. Bob?
Yeah, a couple things for the police department. I attended the awards banquet Saturday, and Chief McCrory even let me present a couple of the awards that night that had some historic significance when I was with the police department. So thank you again for that, Chief. Also, just a reminder, Public Safety Day is this Saturday between 10 and 2 at Paul Mason Sportsplex. Stop by and see the equipment, see the teams that law enforcement and fire have. I'm sure they'll be happy to give you a demonstration. And my final thing, and this is an invitation to everybody, and I mean everybody that's here, that's in the city, that's within TV range of this tonight. Crossroads Church is presenting our concert crusade for 2019. It's going to be April 20th, the day before Easter. It'll be at the Casa Grande Union High School football field. It's all free. Sorry? Good for you. It's all free, and we're featuring a nationally known band this year, Big Daddy Weave. If you listen to Christian music, you'll know that name, and it promises to be a great show. And did I mention it's free? We take care of everything. So anyway, I'll mention it again next meeting, but I would encourage you all
What
to
was the
come
time?
out and have a good time.
The times?
6 o'clock. And you can go online to crossroadscg.com. Even though it's free, you can get your name on the list for reserved seating, so you're not forced to sit in the grass or climb up the bleachers or anything. It'll be on the lawn, seating all set up for you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, let's see. We had mayor's reading program this last week, so that was, as usual, a lot of fun. I also was up in Phoenix several times. I had a CAG meeting, I had a GPEC meeting. Nobody knows what those acronyms are, but Greater Phoenix Economic Council, and then
Unfortunately, we do.
and then
That's
Central
the sad part.
Central Arizona Government's meetings. So all important governmental meetings that we, hopefully get things done for the city. The Pinal Partnership was last Friday. That was it was all about water again, and it was interesting. And then we went to the city, Eloy City Hall grand opening. That was an amazing building, and Micah Powell was there. Just
my stepson.
So he was, yeah,
My nephew.
Yeah.
He was energetic.
He was in rare form, and basically said, "I hope every politician that's here will be jealous by the time they were," and I was jealous. So he accomplished his goal. I also met with one of the Arizona founders. Actually, they run the oldest rodeo in Arizona, up in Prescott. And her family actually owns the PBR logo or brand, PBR.
Yeah.
Not Pabst Blue Ribbon, but the
Yeah,
pro
yeah.
bull riders, professional bull riders. And they want to bring an event to Casa Grande.
Whoa.
So sometime in hopefully February, March, early March, we'll pick a Saturday and have our own PBR rodeo event here in Casa Grande.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting news. Again, congratulations to Helen Newharth, and her 28 years really is ahead of our chamber. I just want to kind of give her a shout out. And then we played in the Ride for the Warrior golf tournament, which was Saturday, raised a bunch of money for, really for the, I think it all goes to the, memorial over at Dave White. Not Dave White, at Paul Mason.
Paul Mason.
I have a CAP, that's the Central Arizona Project. The board is going to be here in town this week, so I'm presenting to them on Thursday, just before I do the State of the City. So everybody come out for the State of the City. It's going to be at the new Community Center, Community Rec Center. So it'll be the first time it'll be open to the public.
At what time?
At 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 4th. So I expect to see everybody there. There may be standing room only, so if you want a seat, you might want to get there early. But it's a beautiful facility. I think you're going to be totally shocked at what it looks like when we finally get in there. Also, don't forget that on Tuesday, April 2nd, is tomorrow is the Main Street Spaghetti Western, and there may be a sneak peek at the Neon Park. Maybe the first time it gets lit up, if APS got us power. So, if there's power to the park, there'll be some neon signs that'll be turned on. All right, so that'll probably happen. It starts at 5, but the lighting probably wouldn't happen until about 7, if I had to guess, because it doesn't really get dark till 7.
What day is that, Mayor?
That's tomorrow, Tuesday.
They play Texas Hold'em there, too.
Yeah, Texas Hold'em. Mr. Powell usually goes to it. I know I've seen pictures of him there.
It's Arizona Gives Day, too, right?
Yeah, it's Arizona Gives Day. Let's see, what else? I am meeting this Friday also with ASU. We're going to be talking about the Science and Technology Center. So hopefully we'll come up with some good plans on how we're going to get our own Science and Technology Center built here in Casa Grande. And right now it's looking like ASU, and maybe even U of A might be part of it. So I know Matt doesn't care about U of A, but
If they help Casa Grande, I'm all good, man.
oh, let's see. And then we have the CGPD Volunteer Appreciation Dinner on Saturday, April 13th, and then of course the grand opening for the Neon Park on that same night. Yeah, I think that's it. That's good enough. Oh, Crime Victims Week is is the week of April 8th also, so we'll be reading a proposition on Monday, and then also there's a candlelight vigil on Friday. It starts at 4, goes 4 to 7. I think the vigil's towards the end of it. So if anybody's interested, that's Crime Victims, kind of culmination of the week. I did want to say one thing about water. We're working with Arizona Water and the city and putting together some maps that show where all of the Arizona water certificates are at, where the 100-year water certificates are located. We have probably in excess in Casa Grande of 24,000 water certificates.
That haven't been used.
That haven't been used. 24,000, it's actually closer to 25,000 by the time we're done.
You could go to sleep that night?
Well, somehow we got to do something.
Oh, I know.
So, anyway, we need to free up some of that water, but I don't want to say that too loud because all the developers will be down my throat. But anyway, I'll get you guys a map and you'll be able to see it. But we're working on that too. So.
It's good that you did that.
All right. Anything else? Anybody? Larry, did we miss anything?
No, sir.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Lisa, you can't beat Mary on that. You had the second. You couldn't